This is VikesNow, another bye-week edition. The Vikings are 6-6 with about 50 to 60% chance of reaching the postseason. And wouldn't you know it, who'da thunk it? After Kirk Cousins got hurt at the end of October, there is a quarterback controversy or debate, whichever noun you'd like to use. I'm here with Dakota, Koep, and Tyler Ireland this week to talk about some of that quarterback controversy stuff. How are you guys?
Doing good. How are you, Dustin?
Not bad. Tyler, yourself, how are you?
It's been a chaotic couple of days, but I'm super pumped.
Right on. All right, so 6-6 in 9 days. They play the Raiders. We shall see what type of Raiders team that is. They're on a bye as well, so there goes that little advantage. But all operations have focused on the Vikings quarterback position because head coach Kevin O'Connell would not name a starter on Monday night after the gruesome loss to the Bears, nor would he do it on Tuesday at a press conference. So I think for at least another 5 days, we have an honest to goodness debate about who's going to start. And we're going to talk about that. Dakota, I'm going to start with you. If your last name was O'Connell, who would you personally start between Joshua Dobbs, Jaren Hall, and Nick Mullens?
Well, if my last name was O'Connell, I would be throwing a party because I absolutely adore Kevin O'Connell. Being the optimistic person that I am, I personally would start Dobbs. We were kind of speaking about this a little bit, and I had said that this was already in my notes, but I'd start Dobbs. I would start him very much on a, like, you fuck up once, you're out of there kind of mentality. You turn over the ball, you intercept, whatever, you're done kind of a mentality. But my hope is that because the Raiders are ranked 25 according to Fox, that they do something a lot more run heavy with him. I was describing the Bears game as sort of more of a Kirk Cousins game plan, or whatever you want to describe it as, but it definitely to me felt like more Kirk Cousins. And so I think they're going to start, or at least I would personally start Josh Dobbs. I would pull out any of the mobile QB plays that I have, any of the sneaks, anything like that out of my pocket, put it into the game plan, and, hope that that helps his confidence.
I think some of us have suggested, whether it's in writings or on Twitter, like, you need to get Josh Dobbs out and moving. And then it's met with the opposition. Well, he's not a rushing quarterback. And it's like, I don't mean like he is an option quarterback in college. I mean that the pocket moves with him, because the playbook that is designed for Cousins that Dakota, you just touched on, is not tailor-made for Dobbs. He is not a very good pocket passer. He can't throw outside the numbers. I've come to realize that is why he is a journeyman, is because if it's towards the sidelines, like Jordan Addison for a game-winning touchdown, he's just kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo or Teddy Bridgewater. They have that deficiency. They're not surgical like Kirk Cousins is, or any top 10 quarterback is. That's what separates, in my opinion, Dobbs from being a top 12 quarterback, is his inability to throw outside the numbers. But Dakota says, we can get around that if you just get him moving a little bit, put him on a short leash. If something happens fumble wise, interception wise, if it's heinous, they could go to Mullens or Hall. Tyler, who would you, if you were Tyler O'Connell, who would you start? We're going to get to predictions in a second.
Yeah, if it were me, I'm the Jaren Hall truther, so I'm starting Hall. I think you got to see what you have in him. I thought he had a great first drive before he got hurt. And I thought, honestly, in the preseason compared to Nick Mullens, Jaren Hall, although it didn't show up on the stat sheet, I felt did more with less. He was working with the third team, so he didn't look as good because he was like, Alan Ali was blocking for him, like that third string offensive line. His best receiver was like N'Keal Harry, right? That's not the situation he would be entering as a starter. He'd have Jefferson, he'd have Addison, all those guys, plus a capable offensive line. So, Kwesi drafted him in the 5th round. That doesn't prevent the team from drafting a quarterback next year. But you still kind of, if the season's lost anyways, you might as well give him these few games to see how he does under pressure. You're going to play the Lions twice. You're going to play the Packers again. And to start off, you're going against a team that's starting Jake Browning and who is Vegas starting? Aiden O'Connell?
Yep.
I could be wrong. But, I mean, those are 2 easy matchups for Hall. Like, he's not going to be facing a high-flying offense until those divisional games happen. So I just think with Hall, He knows the system like Nick Mullens, but he's also a mobile quarterback like Dobbs. Maybe not to that extent, but he can make things happen out of structure. And I think he gives you the best chance to win.
I agree with that. Although I'm in a really cool but weird spot. Whoever they pick, I'm going to be excited about it. And normally there would be one option like Mannion where I'd be like, yeah, I do not want to see X guy. But this gearing up for 9 days from now, if they announce on Thursday that it's Nick Mullens, I'll be like, yeah, I get it. They want Diet Kirk. They want to fling it around in the pocket. If they announce Dobbs, going to be like, yeah, he deserves a little reclamation. He probably won't turn over 4 times again. And then I've settled on Hall because of what Tyler said. I think he is the love child stylistically between Dobbs and Mullens. He's probably not quite as fast as Dobbs can hit at top speed, but I don't think that Hall would be a guaranteed turnover spigot. That's just like, oh, hey, we're getting sacked. We're flinging it up like we're in 4th grade. I don't think Hall will do that. In fact, I know Hall won't do that. So I think that Hall blends both of the skill sets. And then there's always the great unknown. I think we know the ceiling of Dobbs and Mullens if they get into the postseason is they're probably going to lose in the wild card, or if they find an upset at the Lions or 49ers, they're going to get spanked the following week. I think there's this little glimmer of hope that Hall is the real deal. And like, why not ride that when you already know the veteran ceilings of these 2 other guys? Now, I can be talked into either other scenario, but right now I've settled on Hall and I don't think I'll deviate from it. But now I want to do predictions. We have 2 Hall truthers, and then Dakota is sticking with Dobbs with a short leash. But Dakota, what do you think will happen, whether it's announced on Wednesday, Thursday, or Sunday morning? Who will the Vikings start?
I genuinely have no idea. And I feel like usually I'm fairly confident in the things that I have to say on this podcast. I'm well researched. I have my notes. But this is the one time where I don't know, because Kevin O'Connell, like we said, he did not sound the happiest at his presser. I think I had compared him to that fight that Mike Zimmer had with Kirk Cousins. That's to me how Kevin O'Connell was coming off. It's really hard to know when you've got pros and cons, and it's not like pros and cons. It's the pros and cons for all 3 quarterbacks are really even. Personally, I wouldn't start Nick Mullens. He's got the elbow injury history. He's coming off of a back injury that's kept him on IR for most of the season. Josh Dobbs, obviously, I love him. Josh Dobbs, my guy. I think that he fits holes in the run game, that we have a lot of holes. But he has, and I've been tweeting a lot about this, my biggest issue with him is that as he's going down, he has that quarterback mentality to throw the ball, but he always does it slightly too late. Gives the defense enough time to adjust, and that's where the interceptions are coming from in my head. Jaren Hall, new guy, he did look really great in the one game that we saw him play for a drive, but he's young. There's a lot of time for him to, kind of similar to Dobbs, have that fantastic start and then just sort of tank. But I think, knowing Kevin O'Connell, knowing that he has made promises of fixing things in the past, and then we see otherwise, specifically kind of pointing at how Twitter views Alexander Madison right now. I think he's going to go with Dobbs one last time. Again, keep it on a short leash. I don't know, however, if Nick Mullens is going to be the backup. I would not be surprised if we have Jaren Hall, just because, similar to what you were saying, Jaren Hall is more of a transitional point between Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullens. Plus, again, to me personally, having a quarterback who has a history of an elbow injury and is coming off of a back injury that's kept him on the IR for most of the season, that's stressful to me. I don't want to lose another quarterback. And as we all know, Kevin O'Connell has lately been playing not to lose, so I don't think he's going to play to win with a quarterback, if you get my drift.
Nick Mullens, for what it's worth, I don't know if they tipped their hand, was the QB2 against the Bears, and Jaren Hall was in that emergency role in case something happened to the both of them. So I don't know if that was a hint or a tell, but Tyler, what is your prediction? You want Jaren Hall, but what will happen?
Yeah, my prediction is Nick Mullens. I think he is viewed as the safe option. I'm not sure if I agree with that assessment, but I think the Vikings feel that way. I talked a bit about how, let's see what we have in Hall, but I wonder if the Vikings feel like, let's see what we have in Mullens. I mean, don't forget the Vikings traded for Mullens last year. He's had a whole offseason to sit behind Kirk, plus this year. If anyone knows the offense, it's Nick Mullens. And, the Vikings probably, excuse me, I'm trying to collect my words here. They might want more structure within the offense. And Nick Mullens is just that traditional pocket passer and someone you can put in and know exactly what you're going to get out of him. So I think that's the route they take. I hope that isn't, but that's my prediction.
I agree with you again. I do. I've deliberated on the evidence and Kevin O'Connell's words, and I've settled on Nick Mullens as my prediction. And it's mainly because if Kirk Cousins had torn his Achilles at the Eagles in September, Nick Mullens would have taken over and none of us would have bitched until he wasn't good. It was his job and it wasn't controversial. And I think we just put him all in the back seat because Jaren Hall got a start when Mullens was on IR. Josh Dobbs took the whole world by aeronautical storm. So I think Mullens unjustly got a backseat relegation just because of his injury. I do think it will be Mullens when O'Connell announces it. The only thing I'm skittish is about this guy is even less mobile than Kirk Cousins. He has -3 rushing yards in his career. I mean, he is statuesque and not like in a big positive, like good statue. Like he marinates in the pocket. And if that works, great. I mean, it was rather apparent that the Vikings wanted a pocket passer against the Bears for better or worse. So I'm not like really firm 100% it's going to be Mullens, but I think because O'Connell would not name Dobbs the starter, I mean, it was really like you had your opportunity to say, this is my guy. You guys are weird for telling me it's not, but he didn't do that. So I do think a change is afoot. I think it'll be Mullens. Tyler.
Yeah, a quick tidbit on Mullens as well. He played well in San Francisco when he was there. Just like operating the Shanahan offense where pretty much you can plug and play any quarterback and they'll succeed. I wonder if Kevin O'Connell can do that for Mullens because we saw it with the first 2 games for Dobbs where he looked fantastic. And I don't think Mullens, as bland as he is and how uninspired the fan base is around the idea of starting Nick Mullens, he's not Sean Mannion. Like, he's at least competent. So maybe the Vikings, the skill pieces around him and Kevin O'Connell can make him look better.
I agree, especially on Mullens. I mean, he's a QB2 gunslinger. That's how he plays. And I think the only reason he would be considered bland is because he doesn't have legs. And in the modern NFL, everybody wants a mobile quarterback or at least somebody like Rodgers, who when things get bad, you can dance out of the pocket and not necessarily take off and run. But you can squeak by. All right, let's get to some, let's say, rest of season predictions. Dakota, I'll start with you. How will these Vikings finish the season as in a record? You can either say like the remaining 5 games, 3-2, 4-1, or you can give me the end of season record, whatever is simplest.
I'm not really good at math, and it's like 9 a.m. where I am right now, so I'm just gonna do the last 5 games.
Fair.
Realistically, 2-3. Optimistically, quarterback situation figures itself out. Turnover situation figures itself out. I'm this is all like my Christmas wish list kind of stuff, but 4-1 if we're able to figure out the turnover rate. I myself, I've only had 1 loss when I've ever gone to a Vikings game. I'm going to the Packers game, so they owe me after the Buccaneers game, but realistically, 2-3 our next 5 games, 4-1 if we are able to figure out the quarterback situation. I would like to say really fast on the Nick Mullens situation. He's not a mobile quarterback. I've got a knee injury and I can still run like than he can. If that tells you anything. So
all right. So at 2-3, if that is your feel it in your bones prediction, we will all be scoreboard watching week 17 and week 18. Familiar territory for Vikings fans, but not ideal. Tyler, what do you have, either end of season record or remaining 5 games?
Yeah, so if Mullens starts the rest of the way, they're finishing these last 5 games 1-4, and then you finish the season 7-10, miss the playoffs. You're not beating any divisional opponents with Mullens under center. You're not.
Man, you don't like him, do you?
Once. And I think Green Bay is surging to the point where Love can outplay Mullens. So, and they still have a good defense in Green Bay too. It's mismanaged by Joe Barry, but it's talented. They've got a lot of good, players on that defense. So The sooner that Kevin O'Connell realizes that Jaren Hall is the better option to start at quarterback, the more optimistic I am about our last 5 games. But I just think Mullens is going to get that start next week, and it's going to be a close game. And I don't like a close game with a backup quarterback with very little upside, and I have not been impressed with the Vikings rushing attack. So you're not getting much help there outside of your wide receivers and your tight ends in the passing game. It's like Ty Chandler has had moments, Alexander Madison has had moments, but it hasn't been consistent enough to really alleviate the pressure off of a backup quarterback like Nick Mullens.
So if you hear middle of next week that it is Jaren Hall or it is Josh Dobbs, does your 1-4 bottom floor does that rise?
Yeah, it certainly rises if you're starting Hall or Dobbs. Heck, it as critical as I've been of Dobbs the past 2 weeks, he would still be a better option than Nick Mullens, in my opinion, just because he has that element to his game where he has that mobility. You know, he's going to turn the ball over a ton, sure, but he has something that most quarterbacks don't have. And I think Hall has a little bit of that too. But if you finish the season with Hall, you're looking at like 3-2. With Dobbs, you're looking at 2-3. With Mullens, 1-4. But it really just depends on the timing of if they were to make a switch at quarterback from the first one they chose, whether it's Mullens this week or whoever, to another one, that can impact the final record as well.
Point of order, Tyler talks about Nick Mullens the way I talk about Sean Mannion habitually on this show. So all right, so we have the here and now stuff. We put that to bed, kind of all over the board. I believe the Vikings will finish 3-2 no matter the conglomeration of quarterback. I think the defense is good enough. I think they're going to learn from their sins in the fourth quarters of the last 2 games about being conservative on offense. Even if the quarterback has 4 interceptions, I believe Kevin O'Connell will gun it next time. He's a young coach. You learn from your mistakes. And I don't think the Brian Flores defense will all of a sudden decide to stop blitzing on the game's final drive. I think both of those guys will learn from that. So I have 3-2 because the defense is so good. This isn't a big hurrah to the offense, but none of us have even talked about Justin Jefferson coming back, and that will matter no matter who the quarterback is. So peering into the future, which is going to smack us in the face in about a month and a half. Dakota, I want to know, where are you at for 2024 quarterback stock? The Vikings have the option to re-sign Kirk Cousins for probably a 1 or 2 year deal. Not to do that and keep Mullens or re-sign Dobbs as a patch over and draft a QB1 in the first round, or do both. Bring Kirk back 1 year, $35 million, and then go draft Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Where are you at for what you'd like to see happen in that arena?
I mean, it's no surprise that I really like Kirk Cousins. If you don't know that about me by now, have you been watching what I'm on? I've been so vocal about this, like in every capacity that I can be. Kirk Cousins is here to stay. I don't think he wants to play football for much longer, but obviously, as he said, he knows that he's got a couple more seasons left in him. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but at their pressers, in their own little private bubbles, every time we hear them talk about him, Kevin O'Connell is optimistic about him coming back. The management is optimistic about him coming back. Kwesi even said, at this point, it's just about the negotiation. Last season, he was willing to take a pay cut to stay with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings were like, well, let's see how this season, plays out. Homie was playing at an MVP status. He still has stats that some quarterbacks that have been playing all season can't even hit yet. How do you not bring him back for another season or two, especially when you've got this huge cornucopia of quarterbacks in the draft? My dream scenario, you sign Kirk, you also sign JJ. I don't think enough people have been talking about that. JJ has specifically said that part of his negotiations do have to do with Kirk Cousins being extended. But regardless, get a quarterback. I don't think we'll be getting Bo Nix, which makes me really sad. He's kind of my dream scenario, but that's we're looking like kind of middle of the pack unless we trade for the first round.
About 20th right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think we pick up a quarterback. I don't really know who off the top of my head at this point. We pick up a quarterback, we have him sit, we have him learn behind Kirk Cousins. In the offseason, I personally wouldn't be surprised if Nick Mullens is gone, just because obviously it's looking like Kevin O'Connell wants a younger quarterback room to learn behind Kirk Cousins, the master. But yeah, that's sort of my dream scenario. 1 to 2 year extension, put somebody behind him, you're golden. I'm not sold on the you draft a QB, you put him in right away, we're in the Super Bowl mentality. I don't think that for us it's sort of the way, but maybe it's because it's never really happened for the Vikings. That's why I'm a little cautious about that. But yeah.
I think Bo Nix will be available in the Vikings draft range, especially if they finish the season like Tyler's prediction. I think Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix will be in the Vikings conversation, even if they have to trade up 5, 6, 7 spots. I too enjoy Kirk Cousins, but I don't know that the budget adds up. Even though Kevin O'Connell has talked very positively about wanting him back, I can't ignore that. But the thing is, Jefferson's about to get $35 million per season. They're already employing the richest tight end in NFL history. I think they have to extend Danielle Hunter, which will be about 25 to 30 million. Then you have Darrisaw's contract on the docket. I don't know if there's room for Cousins' customary 35, I guess, all the way up to 45 million. It'll be interesting to see if they can make that work for a year or two, because Jefferson's money shouldn't kick in full blown until 2025. But I said this last year. In fact, my endorsement on VikingsTerritory.com the day before the draft was to trade whatever you have to trade to get CJ Stroud. And nobody would have cared that it cost 2 or 3 first rounders, seeing what we see from Stroud now. So I'm right there where I am. If they want to bring Kirk back for a year or two, great. But I think last April was the time to draft a quarterback. Stroud would have been really expensive because he ended up being the 2nd overall pick. But I'm back to where I am. Whether it's probably going to be Jaden Daniels from me. That's who I like right now. But yes, I want them to, no matter what, if they're going to keep Dobbs as a patch over, Mullens as a patch over, I want them to draft the 1st round quarterback this year, because if not now, when? I mean, you're going to have 3 years under your belt with a new regime and you're just doing the same thing over and over. Tyler, what do you got for your wish list at QB1 2024 offseason?
Yeah, I agree with you, Dustin. You draft a quarterback regardless if you bring back Kirk, regardless if Hall starts the last 5 games and just goes off. It does not matter. This is too deep of a quarterback class to pass up on one. Last year after Stroud, Young, there was a bit of a fall off. People had a lot of questions about Richardson, but he looks really promising. And Levis, Mayo in his coffee? Nah, I'm good. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing with Kirk. I think I underappreciated him a little bit post-injury, thought that, maybe a different quarterback could play well under the circumstances and the Viking situation. But he's 36, coming off an Achilles. If you can get him back on a 1-year team-friendly deal, great. If not, you just got to start a rookie quarterback next year, because the Vikings are not in Super Bowl mode. It's not win now. It's okay to take a step back and get, younger on offense and defense and, develop this team a little bit. It's not all in. And honestly, Kirk Cousins at this point of his career is Alex Smith with the Commanders, formerly Washington. I can't say that word on this podcast, but he's coming off of a major injury, and you're basically only bringing Kirk back as a placeholder. So I think you got to draft someone here this offseason.
And I think they will. I mean, there's a small chance that there's a small chance that their guy goes into round 2, and then they can do both, draft an edge rusher or something, and then get the quarterback in round 2. But the history of round 2 quarterbacks in the last 10 years is really dicey. It's weird. You can't really find an elite one. It's usually the ceiling is Derek Carr. All right, Dakota, where can we find you on social media?
I can be found on Twitter. It is public now. I can be found on Twitter at Kirk's Minivan. I can be found on TikTok and Instagram at Western Dakota.
Fantabulous. And Tyler, where do you write? Where can we find you on Twitter?
Yep, staff writer for Daily Norseman. You can find me at Twitter at Tyler Ireland MIN. We've got a new Twitter handle now, so it's Tyler Ireland MIN, short for Minnesota.
Fantastic. Well, when we talk next week, I think we'll probably be able to break down who that quarterback is and what we expect from him against the Raiders. I guess there's a small chance they lead it all the way up into Sunday. But I'm going to guess that'll be our topic. Until then, you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you in 7 days. All right?
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks,
Later.
Dustin.
Take it easy.